Homeschooling podcast possible. So let's take a moment to learn more about this season's sponsor, Sunlight. Want the best education possible for your children? Reading to your children offers numerous benefits, including more sophisticated language, greater empathy, the experience of living in other times and places, an increased vocabulary, the opportunity to pass on your values to your children, an increased attention span, higher test scores, and a thrilling homeschool experience for both parents and students. Reading together is the best way to learn. Sunlight, spelled S-O-N, curriculum is a literature-rich program built on brilliant books to share with your children. Sunlight covers all subjects and all grades from preschool through high school. Sunlight graduates have gone to prestigious schools, including Harvard, Stanford, and Notre Dame. And these thousands of students have enjoyed their homeschool experience along the way. Want a free trial of what a Sunlight education might look like? Request your own Sunlight invitation, and Sunlight will send a free book and schedule to your door. Go to sunlight.com/joyfully today. Sunlight with an S-O-N for your free trial. Sunlight, the program you're guaranteed to love or your money back. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast with our mom,
Misty Bailey.
Tips and encouragement for
real-life homeschooling
is headed your way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 57 of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I am Misty Bailey, blogger at Joy in the Journey and podcaster here at Joyfully Homeschooling. Going to apologize in advance again for my cold. This has been absolutely something that has been horrible to get away from, but I've got to record this episode even though I'd like to put it off, but it does have to happen. So just bear with me a little bit and give me a little bit of grace on all fronts. So this is the last episode of the season. So just a reminder to go grab your free sample of Sunlight at sunlight.com/joyfully. After this episode, we will be taking a little bit of a break for summer. I'm honestly not sure how long. My goal is to jump back in the 1st of June, but it may be mid or even late June. We shall see. When the podcast comes back, we will be coming back with a new perspective. More topic episodes with guests, but of course, we're still going to be chatting about homeschool struggles and joys, and the purpose of the podcast is the same. We've done 4 seasons so far asking the same questions, and while every guest's answers have been a little different, there have been a lot of similarities. So we're going to expand our horizons once we come back. I know when I did the birthday party for the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast, many of you had topic suggestions, things you wanted to cover, so we are going to be doing that. Another change is there will be no more seasons. I will be coming to you every single week with no season breaks. There may still be a break here or there due to the holidays, but the seasonal aspect of the podcast will be gone. So I have interviews scheduled based on some of the feedback that you guys gave me at the Facebook party with some special needs experts. A few of you also had interview requests, and I got those as well. So I will be chatting in upcoming episodes with Cindy Rollins, Kendra Fletcher, Kalina from the 5-Hour School Week, and many more. You guys also expressed an interest in high school, so I have an interview scheduled with a college admissions expert as well. I also added a record button on my podcast page, joyfullyhomeschooling.com. What this means is that you can head over there and record a question you have for me. Easy peasy, no forms to fill out. Just go to joyfullyhomeschooling.com and scroll to the bottom. There you will see a record button. Record your question and I will do my best to answer it in an upcoming episode. And the last announcement is don't forget that I will be speaking at the Southeast Homeschool Expo July 26th and 27th. This is in Atlanta, Georgia at the Cobb Galleria, and I would love to see you there. So, That was a lot. I'm sorry. But I don't do a lot of like introductions or announcements on interview episodes, so they sometimes get thrown into these solo episodes. But anyway, on to this week's episode topic. So I have honestly been dreading recording this episode because it involves me acknowledging failure as a parent, and no one likes admitting that they failed. But alas, we are here. The title of this episode is Sacrificing Your Relationship on the Altar of Homeschooling. And who knows, I may change it before this airs, but in my mind, that is what kept coming to the forefront as I was writing out and making notes on this episode topic. Relationships in homeschooling is a common fear that parents have before they begin homeschooling, and a topic that has been mentioned over and over again on the podcast. Relationships matter. Relationships trump academics. Homeschooling is all about relationships. Yet, I didn't truly get it. I mean, I nodded my head, agreed with the people speaking, but it wasn't truly living out in my own home. I told you guys this episode was real. A couple episodes ago, I did one on what homeschooling has taught me. And again, I think that so many times God uses homeschooling to mold us, shape us, and sanctify us. And he's even used this podcast to teach me lessons like what we're going to be talking about in this episode. So, homeschooling bloggers oftentimes show the highlight reel, not all the jazz that goes on behind the scenes. And I try to be real, I really do, but I still don't share all the bad stuff because I also want to honor my kids' privacy. I feel like we walk a fine line as homeschool bloggers and podcasters because for me, I truly believe that God gave me this blog, this podcast, as a ministry tool to encourage and equip homeschool moms and to kind of share my struggles with you. But as my kids have gotten older, it is really hard to walk that fine line between their privacy, their story, and what God's teaching me and how I can transfer that over into lessons also for you guys. It's a fine line. And honestly, guys, things have not always been good in our home this past school year. We have had some major heart issues with one of my kids. But the reality is I can't place the blame on her. And this is where the lesson comes in. I need to take the blame myself. So I decided to teach this child a lesson early on this year. It was right after Christmas break. And have her go through the Bible study, Fruit of the Tongue from Not Consumed Ministries. I even messaged Kim personally and asked her what Bible study she would recommend for this particular issue with my child. And she recommended this one. And I've done her Bible studies before, and they're wonderful. But in this one, I had a major moment, or actually 10 moments of conviction as we started walking through this Bible study together, me and her. All of the things I expected from her, I was not actually walking out myself. And in expecting her to do these things that I wasn't doing, I was sacrificing our relationship. I was not modeling the exact behavior I expected from her. And the truth was that I had a heart issue too. I was hindering my testimony to my kids because I was not walking out what I was teaching. I was not a doer of the lessons. I was only a seer. I was hearing the word, but not applying it to my life. I was not changing my ways. And as Christians, what kind of example is that leaving for our kids when we do that? What kind of example was I leaving for my kids? Not much at all. And in fact, by not doing this, by not modeling the behavior, by not walking what I was teaching, being a doer of the lessons, I was fracturing the foundation of the relationship between me and one of my kids. I was podcasting about homeschooling, blogging about homeschooling, encouraging homeschool moms to the best of my ability, but the truth was in my own home, the relationship with my daughter was fractured. And that hurt a lot. And the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. And after much time, prayer, and soul searching, I wanted to share this story with you as well because I have a feeling I'm not alone. I love blogging. I really love podcasting. I love the ministry that God has given me, but I'm not here to build an empire. I'm here to build a life that matters. And I'm not going to sacrifice my family on the altar of ministry. I'm not going to sacrifice my family on the altar of what others would deem a good homeschool. And I began to ask myself, when my kids looked back on our days, what would they say about me? And for 2 of my kids, I'm sure it would be positive. But for that other kid, that button pusher, they got the worst of me. And what I wanted her to say about me would not match up with how I acted or treated her most days. And the reason was I was seeing behaviors in her that I detested, behaviors that I know are not biblical, and I felt that I needed to teach her not to be that way. But here's the kicker. She was seeing those exact same behaviors in me. And guys, ouch, that hurts. And that is not what homeschooling is about. That is not what I want our homeschool days and memories to be remembered as. So we needed to change. And all of this took place around the time that I interviewed Connie Albers, and her interview meant so much to me. I ordered her book, began reading it, and I'm going to discuss it more in an upcoming episode. And then my daughter and I also attended a session by Connie at the Great Homeschool Conventions. And between all of these avenues, there are a few things we have changed in our home to help our relationship. I wanted to share these with you in case I'm not the only one out there struggling with heart issues, and I'm not the only one out there struggling with a relationship issue with their kids. So the first one is I need my own Bible time, not just morning time with the kids, but time of my own to dig into God's word. I used to make it a priority, but lately gotten way out of the habit with it, and that has been a huge mistake. And part of the reason, I don't want to make excuses for me getting out of the habit of my Bible time, but the reality is, my husband recently did a job change, and when he took this job change, our whole routine, our whole schedule, everything was knocked off its rocker. Things have just been really crazy, and we pushed through with homeschooling, but in the process, my sleep has been changed. And anyway, I give you a whole list of excuses, but the truth of the matter is they're excuses. And the reason I'm sharing that is because I know that many of you too maybe used to make Bible time a priority, but things got out of whack and you've had a hard time getting back into the routine of it. And I think that was the root of a lot of the issues that we had between myself, my daughter, my own heart issues, and our relationship. So it's a huge mistake. We can't do that. That needs to be priority before anything else, our time with God. The next thing that I have done to kind of help fracture our relationship and help me grow as a mom is to get some mentors for parenting teens. Moms I can talk to who have good relationships with their kids. Moms who will hold me accountable and listen to me when we have a struggle. Moms who will pray with me first before offering advice. And it's kind of funny because I have a mentor mom that I've talked about before on the podcast, the wonderful and beautiful Jamie Brown, who I know will never actually listen to this podcast, but my relationship with her means so much to me. And I messaged her shortly after the kids got into the teenage years, which my middle's not even in the teenage years yet, but you know what I'm talking about, like the hormone phase. And I said, why did you never tell me how hard it was to parent teenagers? And I think that is the reality. Like, we hear so oftentimes from people that parenting teens is hard. But my mentor never told me how hard parenting teens was. And my daughter, she said something to me the other day. She's like, well, maybe sometimes you guys just think parenting teens is hard is because so many people tell you through the years that parenting teens is going to be hard, so you expect it. And I kind of laughed because I could see that happening, because so many times people talk about how horrible Teenagers are. And I don't think teens are horrible. I love my teens, and I love many of the teens that my kids are friends with. Teens are not horrible. Our culture is horrible, but the teens themselves are not bad. But the truth of the matter is, when we start talking to moms of teenagers and parents of teenagers, too often times we only hear the bad things. We don't hear the good. We don't hear that they become our friends. We don't hear of the beauty of getting to watch them grow and mold in their own relationships with Christ and so many other things. And so finding a mentor who will pray with you before offering advice, who will encourage you on your homeschool and parenting journey of teens and not just help you dog your teenagers, is so important. It is crucial. So pray that God will put that person in your life. Pray that God will help you find that mentor. And then someday, guys, when we're on the back end of this, we can be that mentor to somebody else. The third thing that has helped our relationship is that my daughter felt that her interests and feelings were being neglected, that they weren't deemed as important as the other kids. So this particular child has interests and things that I don't, and things that I maybe would never have really thought were important. And that came across in the way I was reacting to her talking about these interests. And I guess I never really hid the fact that I didn't find them important or interesting, and that was wrong. We need to encourage our kids no matter where they are. I needed to encourage her where she is, where she was, and I need to consider her interests just as important as a sport or a church activity, because to her, they're a gift, something she is good at, something she wants to pursue long term, and something that God can use for His glory, even if I don't see that now. So I've taken more of an interest in these things. I've set aside time every day to talk to her about these things and set aside time each week to go with her and to explore her interests. Because it's important. My relationship with her is important, and what God has laid on her heart as interests and desires is important. And I don't know how God's going to use her and her ability someday, but I definitely want to have that relationship with her that I will know about it whenever the time comes. So going along with number 3 is I would see her working on something or laying around doing something that I didn't deem important. And I would tell her to stop what she was doing to play with her brother, help me, or do a chore. Never taking the time to ask her what she was doing, never acknowledging that she may be doing something important. And this lesson came from Connie's session that my daughter attended with me. And guys, I actually saw her tear up when Connie mentioned this, because to her, this is a huge deal. Her feelings matter, her interests matter, but I wasn't showing her that respect. And that was wrong. And I didn't realize how much it hurt her until I saw those tears in her eyes at Connie's session. And we actually went up and talked to Connie after the session. And she thanked her. She's like, everything you said in this session was so true. And that was huge, guys. That was huge. And if you have the opportunity to hear Connie do her session on meltdowns and moodiness, please go, because it made a huge impact on me and my daughter. Lastly, I need to model the behavior I want my children to perform. And I know that's perform's not the right word, but you know what I mean. I need to be the example. Before getting frustrated with her for a behavior, a mood, or an action, I need to ask myself if I have modeled that same reaction. If so, I need to point the fingers at me first. Going along with this is apologizing and asking our kids for forgiveness. Guys, they need to know that we do not think we are perfect. We are human beings and perfect mothers, and they need to know that we need to seek forgiveness when we mess up. From others, from God. And this is another way to model that Christ relationship with our kids. Guys, This was not an easy episode, and I hope my rawness encourages someone out there who may be struggling with a similar issue. And I hope you are not alone. I'm right there with you, walking the path of humility and doing the best I can to raise these teens. It's hard. Mothering is not easy, but together and with the help of Christ, we can strive to do it joyfully. And that is it for this episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. Guys, enjoy your summer vacation, and we will be back sometime within the next 4 to 6 weeks. Have a great and wonderful day, guys. Thanks. Bye. This has been an episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast. I thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please take the time to leave a rating or review on iTunes or whatever platform it is that you use to listen to this podcast. That tells the powers to be I'm not talking to myself. Also, hit subscribe. Then you will catch every episode of the Joyfully Homeschooling Podcast each week right there in your podcast feed. You can find show notes and more at joyfullyhomeschooling.com and clicking on the episode number of the episode you are looking for. Thanks, guys. I hope this podcast encouraged you to head out there and have a more joyful homeschool.